Welcome everybody back here at Veil of Sound. And every once in a while I do this thing here where it's 1 a.m. in the morning in Central Europe. And I only do that for people and musicians whose music I really, 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 really like. And as this
Well,
is also part of our Christmas interview marathon, I'm very, very happy to have Laurent Lebec here on the show.
correct.
So Laurent, thanks for joining.
Thank you. Stoked to be
First of
here.
all, is it Laurent? Is it Lauren? How would you like to
Yeah,
have it?
it's Laurent because you can say it properly. Most of the people who say it don't. They have they turn the name a little bit differently. I reside in the U.S., but I am from France. It's where I grew up, and my family is all there except for my immediate family here yet. But parents, siblings, everybody's still in
But
France.
Laurent, I also read in many points that one of the parts of your names is also Schröder. So there
Yes,
is some
well,
German in there.
I'm actually my mother's German, so her family is from uh initially East Germany, when it was that, but relocated to Hamburg, lived there for many years during the Second World War, migrated to Switzerland, um, lived in Ticino, met my father, my grandfather on my dad's side. So his dad was a doctor, and my mom needed medical care, and that's how they met. So I have a hybrid French German family, and I am also married to an American who very likely has some German in her background.
Sounds
So
like the
that's the
European project, isn't it?
yes,
Laurent, you and Pelican
yep,
released a new record this year in 2025 on May 16th.
yes,
Flickering Resonance. I think it's the first one for Run for Cover Records.
correct.
And even more important, it's your first recording with Pelican after rejoining the group 3 years ago. I mean, like you were absent from the band for 10 years.
Yeah,
I mean, that is basically probably the first important question. Not how
yeah.
it got that far, but how did it feel to go back into a recording studio with those three guys?
Uh, so the narrative can be understood in a linear way, but it's as all things, it's much more tetraheaded and complex, and there's lots of spheres of influence on the decisions we make and how we remember our lives lived, from the vantage point of being in the future. So I can tell you that how I understand it now is probably different to how I described it 5 years ago, because now it's been informed by rejoining the band and it's nourished by all this positivity. Um, the initial argument for leaving the band years back, from me, were simply that we were in a constant touring pace. We were just starting to fracture a little bit as friends. We were young. Um, I was in we were all in a variety of relationships, but I had arrived at a point in my relationship with my partner where I wanted to have a child. And I think back then it was one of those like almost like deal breaker decisions because it certainly wasn't like not welcomed or anything, but I could tell in myself that I wanted to commit to it in a way that would be difficult to do. If I kept touring. And so I imagined a future that may or may not have come to pass in which tours would come up and I would have to say no and finding work at home would be difficult. Um, and so my understanding of how my future self would be as a parent started to seem very fractured and a little stressful, to be honest. So I, I think requested that we sort of slow down a little bit. And then eventually that slowing down kind of ground us to a halt a little bit for a band that was really working with repeated momentum. Um, it got to be a little hard to get anything done. Larry and Brian were living in Los Angeles at the time. We managed to do the Ataraxia EP. There was a 10-year anniversary show that we did. And then I asked to leave. I don't know that it landed that well at first. I think it was a difficult decision for all of us, but I was finding some satisfaction with the job I was doing. I was like, I have some stability here. Um, I wasn't working for, you know, a corporation sitting in a cubicle doing whatever. I was starting to work nights at the bar that I'm still at, and some people may say like, oh, compare bartending to being in a band, but really, I just found like a community of people who were either like other musicians or artists, whatever. And so I this immediate kind of kinship to the world of touring made it easier to sort of segue into that. And I did, and I was really happy for a long time. I raised my first son. And obviously, we all kept in touch. I watched their change and their growth and the way that they kind of kept that pace of productivity with Dallas. And then COVID came around, and right around that time, we started working on a reissue campaign for the first few albums that we did via the local label Thrill Jockey, and that just brought about more talking and chatting, going down memory lane, revisiting concerts, looking at old footage, old videos. And I just like my heart just exploded. I was like, wow, I really miss this. And, you humans are naturally adaptive, and I think I was in a little bit of like a bit of a collapsed survival mode around music. And I just like put it to the side. And it was really that sort of romantic thing where like somebody hands you your guitar and they blow the dust off of it and they go, hey, you used to love playing this. And you're like, well, I'll give it a try. And then, you start playing and you're like, oh, I really like this. And so maybe I'm also a little bit less complex than I think I am. Because if I thought things through more, I might have, with some distance, should have been like, hey, let's just take a year or two break. Let me really focus on this. I need this. We could all use it. Let's see where we're at. But um, just like a book where the character dies off and comes back, it makes for a more interesting plot twist. So by coming back in, it was really around these shows that they were doing in Europe where they had then, become a three-piece again, and we're looking for somebody to fill those shows. And so Trevor called me, and I was like, I don't even have to think about it. I absolutely want to do it, even if it's just the three shows. And that's really the way we looked at it. We were like, let's just do some touring, see what's even left of this. It's perfectly okay for a band after 20 years to, bid farewell and tip their hat and say we're going into a, state of hibernation. But we quickly realized we liked playing with each other, and there was chemistry there, and it was like the old days, and people say that, you can go, what do you mean? It's like, well, when you're in a room and you have this sort of unspoken language with three other people who you've spent like countless hours with, like you just know the ins and outs you have with each other creatively. And there was no roadblocks, it was just, we were basically back to the way that it was, but from the vantage point of being a little more studied, a little older, a little more wear and tear, but also some miles behind us of raising families and doing other things and navigating, ups and downs. We were just more equipped to traverse the difficulties of being a band as the adults now than we were when I left. And so I think it created this perfect recipe for writing new material. And it came fairly quickly. We did a couple of covers for a label called Numero Group. We did an
We'll come to
unwound
that in a
cover.
moment. Let's
Oh, okay,
we'll
okay, cool,
come to
cool,
that
cool.
in a
So
moment.
yeah. So that's the long short story
Mm.
of coming back in.
Um, when I listened to your explanation, I thought like, okay, here is a guy who made a rational decision on a very emotional thing, and now saw that, okay, this is something that I might not be able to explain rationally.
Yeah.
Did I mean, like you said that you stayed in touch? Did you also notice that in your absence, the guys became a little less productive than before?
Yeah, I think their productivity around my time in the band had for one, it's a combination of like I'm fairly restless when it comes to to writing. And so once I get going, it's just there's always new things, new things, new things. And
Mhm.
I edit a ton of it, and a lot of it they see, and then a week later they're like, "We should work on that song you showed me a month ago." I was like, "That doesn't exist anymore. It's become this other thing now, right?" So that's not to say that I'm more prolific or whatever, but everybody writes in different ways. Some people are spontaneous; they like to be in the room, they like to vibe it out. I really appreciate creating these little structures that I can then bring into the Sandlot.
Mhm.
We can play around, but certainly I wanted to approach it fairly aggressively in terms of
Mhm.
writing, and
Mhm.
it was well received. We were like, let's be productive. And at that point, Brian had moved back to Chicago, and so three members out of four are here, and
Mhm.
that will that will certainly increase the ability uh, to write songs.
So who's the only one who's now living not in Chicago?
Larry, our drummer, lived in Los Angeles, so you know our sort of modus operandi is that we'll structure kind of basic things, send them to him for him to work on, and then we sort of have these like marathon kind of sessions where we get together uh, and increase productivity.
Interestingly, for me, was also when looking at it, you just also said like, okay, I had to make somewhat of a decision between, family and band and stuff like that. Um, I mean, like at that point, it was really, really going well for Pelican. As you've said, a band that was hyper productive, that had a lot of records out, that was hugely successful. Did you also back then in 2012, ask yourself, okay, what to me is
Yeah, so success at our level, you know, which is fairly mid, certainly, and I'm not, you know, criticizing it or anything. I'm grateful for all the things that we're able to do, but um, the difficulty of any touring musician's life is what you do when you're not touring, because
success?
um, the dividends on physical product and the ability for that to sustain you when you're off the road are hard for everyone at all levels and increasingly getting more and more difficult. So it's you start to ask yourself, what could I be involved with? Can I teach music? Can I have a Patreon? Or can I work in music venues? Whatever it is that you do, you try to find that thing that's gonna fill it out. Ultimately, it also has to be something or someone that allows you to then go back out. And so all of
Mhm.
us face this sort of duality of how much is too much, how much is enough, which tours to do, which not to do. And as you get older and other things enter the picture, those things get more difficult. Arguably, we're in a better position now to welcome things. And we toured 6 to 7 weeks last year, which for them, even without me and for me to return and do that was quite a bit. Certainly wasn't as much as we used to do, but that still allows us to cover a lot of ground, um, and to come home and not be, you know, too spent or to be out so much that we don't get a chance to work on new material. So
Mhm.
you're always trying to find the balance that will not tip the scale too much away from your art, where you feel like you miss it too much, or that you're gone too much and then it stops being fun. I think everybody just has a different place where the pendulum swings differently. And I think we'll always probably be trying to find that place for us. But right now we seem to be at a pretty good place. Um, there was also for me an absence of ideas there at the tail end where I just sort of felt like I was writing things that just increasingly sounded similar, and I felt a little bit uninspired by it. And sometimes distance allows you to occupy some different spaces creatively. And so, in whatever ways can be understood or not, real life has really influenced the writing for this new one, and certainly finding each other again and and just enjoying that presence that we have with each other.
I was also thinking about how to define success
Oh
for
yeah.
for a band like
Well,
yours. And I think I have a perfect example of how successful a band can be in our realms. You had something that a lot of bands would love to have. You had the Pelican burger at Kuma's Corner.
a couple of times actually.
I know. Isn't that like one of the highest acknowledgments of your work in a way? Especially for
Well,
you?
it's certainly locally, yeah, that's a good one. We've gotten to do some pretty cool things. I ran into um a musician friend the other day, and we actually asked him that question, what is success for bands like ours? And he said, if I can go from city to city and play like just the perfect mid-sized venue, like 250, 300 cap, and people are nice, and it's a decent sound system, he's like, that's it. I don't need bigger. I just want to be able to keep sustaining it so that, so you can go do shows, people come out, you commune with each other, there's enough revenue to kind of keep doing it, so that it sustains itself, but
Mhm.
it doesn't dominate um, your livelihood, because then at that point it starts to have a different impact and decisions are made for different reasons.
Yeah, and then it also basically involves the okay, we need to get something out now in order to sustain
Yeah.
this lifestyle. That's true. I also thought of other ways of thinking about, like, okay, success. And I think there is also something, for example, you have you have released on several awesomely famous labels. You were on Hydra Head, Temporary Residence, Southern Lord. You already mentioned the Numero Group. I mean, like, that again is like acknowledgement, that people acknowledge your work. Is that maybe in for this kind of music that you make, is acknowledgement maybe the biggest success you can have apart from any kind of financial success?
Yeah, I think that we want to feel a sense of communal belonging.
Mm,
I think it's less for us because, make no mistake about it, we're in a shape-shifting instrumental band with, nods and influences from very, nuanced, but like headstrong corners. You've got your like the Godflesh side of the camp. You've got like the old school sort of like 90s, uh, your helmets and your drive like Jehu and stuff. And then you've got the Earth influence and you've got ISIS. And so we're not really pulling from like pop doc, right? Or trying to do like a warp tour type of thing. So there is already by design a sort of willingness to just kind of do your own thing. So yes, acknowledgement and community and that sense of belonging.
mm,
For us, we're really all that mattered. It wasn't the amount of people in the room or the amount of shirts sold. It was like we are putting out music on labels that have bands that we listen to, um, and that are doing things that we find relatable. So
mm,
once the first record came out on Hydra Head, we basically had already achieved what we wanted to achieve, And so the fact that it
mm,
kept catapulting and continuing, um, was a wonderful thing. I think at some point it became our livelihood, and there things start to get a bit more complicated as they often do.
mm,
But finding Run for Cover and ending up on Run for Cover was an interesting return to a label, that maybe didn't have as many artists that we sounded like, um, but in talking to them, and the punk and hardcore roots that they sort of came up in the
mm,
Boston area, maybe in a different time frame than how it was for Hydra Head. For us, it there was some comparatives there, and we quickly developed like kinship and conversation that made it seem like, okay, there's a connection here. There's an acknowledgement. This is going to be the right place. We're not in like a transactional place where we're having a real conversation with some
Mm.
substance. And I think that's all we're really looking for. Even with not having words, I think all we're looking for is a substantive conversation happening with our audience. So I don't, I'm not curious about why it's not a, a few more hundred people. I'm just concerned with sounding authentic for the
Yeah.
people that are there.
I think you've mentioned something that is very interesting, and that is the influences or the sound. Larry, a few years back, said about Pelican, uh, to be labeled in so many ways is flattering, really. Nobody can classify us. But if you yourself had to classify or to put Pelican into one or two boxes, which one would you say? And instrumental is not a box.
No, and I actually don't think that instrumental is an accidental thing for us.
Mm,
There was never intention to be instrumental. There wasn't an ease of finding a singer in the beginning, so by the time some of the early shows that were offered to us, you have to imagine like if um, if the amount of bands sounding post rock or sludgy or stoner doom, whatever, are abundant now, like at an Oasis level, not Oasis the band, but like it's like an oasis of bands. Um, it was like a desert of bands back then. There was like
mm,
maybe 10 bands, and that's like globally. So when bands would come through town and promoters were like, I've got High on Fire or ISIS, uh, there was like nobody to open those shows. So
mm,
frequently, shows would be super diverse, and that was cool too. But we were like, we can't not open those shows. So we asked the promoter, Brian Peterson at the time, I said, can we just play those shows? We don't have a singer, but we have like four finished songs that I think would sound cool. Our only reference point for being instrumental would have been the band Five, who were on
Hydrad.
Hydra Head at the time. And, Caius had a couple of instrumental numbers. And then
Earth.
there was Earth, which was Earth was a pivotal band. Like for us, Larry was really into Earth. He introduced Earth to all of us. But it was hearing Earth 3, the first Goat Snake record, that first High on Fire EP, certainly Isis, and Godflesh and Neurosis for good measure. Those were all the bands where I was like, I want to write slow, lumbering riffs that evolve slowly over time.
Mm,
And once we had that blueprint, and especially when Trevor came into the band, he brought a melodic articulation that was interesting to me, and it brought me to that space too. So we
mm,
just bounced ideas off each other. The melodicism is what I think makes it hard to pigeonhole it, because we frequently veer away from minor chords, and heavy for heavy's sake. And
mm,
so whereas there are moments of like contemplation and maybe some inward darkness that's sort of toyed with thematically, for the most part, it's fairly, uplifting sort of
yeah.
triumphant turnarounds. And I think those are really prevalent on Flickering Resonance. Not that they weren't before, but they happen repeatedly over shorter songs. And so I think they just hit in a way that's maybe a little more immediate. Whereas on Fire in Our Throats or Australasia, you would have had to kind of like go find them.
Mm. Would you agree that City of Echoes, in that sense, was a kind of a game changer? Songs became a little shorter, a little bit more poignant, and there was a little, from that record on, I had a feeling as if there was a little more melody.
Yes. Yes, I would say that that was the record where we found ourselves,
Mm,
um, in a big way. Found ourselves as we wanted to be perceived, away from like, it was nobody was holding our hand anymore. It was like this is the record where we just delve into things
Yeah.
in a way that maybe will not sound like others. And it was a divisive record in some ways, precisely because the tempos went up. Clarity was a bit more prevalent. Certainly was heavy, but in a different way.
Mm.
Um, and there is like much more of like a saccharine development of like guitar melodic interplay that wasn't there before. The wall of sound starts to leave, like it was in Australasia um, and the Far North Road. So yeah, City of Echoes is really like a crystallizing of a lot of these different kind of ideas that were maybe more disparate and now just came into focus more.
What I also always liked about the record is the way that, in a way, I think apart from Nighttime Stories, the record which has the highest amount of black on the cover, and at the
Yes.
same time, it is to me, as I said, like, it's like a very uplifting record in a very, very positive sense.
Yeah, and we look for the music to do that for us too. We're writing for
Mm,
ourselves,
mm,
as well as, you write what you hear. And these days, when we wrote the new one, we started with uh, some of the songs that we were doing in the beginning, like maybe had more of a typical sort of structure. And then eventually it starts to inform new spaces,
mm,
and then you're just a little freer, you know.
mm.
So I think by the time we ended, it was a really like it was a completely new thing, and there'll definitely be days where I'll go, I've got this great riff, and Trevor will go, you already wrote that, and I'll go, that's not true. I've never written this. He's like, and he'll slow it down or add one note, and I'm like, yeah, that's right, that's the riff from that song.
Mm.
So um, it gets trickier in some ways to stay inventive, but at the same time not, and um, one of the things that I think was interesting about Flickering Resonance for the way that it was received. I remember some people that I talked to at shows being like, I love it. It just needed like I wanted to hear one like dark, heavy song. I'm like, I just want to say we're not going to write Drought number two. It's not.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not. It's not in us. And if I did, I would be trying to write that song. So I think it's interesting, but that's it. By the same token, you'll run into other people who are like, "This is the record I've wanted you to make," and I
Yeah.
go, "Well, that's great," and I'm happy that when you've got a catalog. It's rare for me that I mean I have my favorites, but like I'll listen to Yes, and I have my favorite Yes records, for example, but I also like particular songs from particular
Mm.
records more so than one overall album as a whole. So I think when you've got seven records in your catalog,
And
that's a
so
great
much
place
other
for
material in between, we also have to say, right?
yeah. So that's a great place for a person getting into it. Be like, there's little moments here that make up what I like about this band, um, across the records. Yeah.
Mm.
But we are an album band, and so I think we'll always be striving to write that perfect summary of what we're all about.
It's interesting that you mention being an album band. I would totally agree with that. But on the other hand, you also had some very, very interesting collaborations or singles. And here I
Yeah,
want to talk about the Numero Group. You released this double A side single last year,
yeah,
not last year, 2 years ago, sorry, I think,
yeah, yeah,
with you doing two covers. You did For Your
yeah,
Entertainment by Unwound, and you
yeah.
did what was it, Gasoline by Karate.
Karate. Yeah.
Um, First of all, who chose those songs?
Oh, we did.
All of you?
Uh, yeah, yeah. Karate was a band that we all liked.
Mhm.
Unwound, we all really liked.
Yeah.
Um, and then we just delved in and looked for the ones that we would enjoy doing. And we knew that we wanted to do them as vocal songs.
Sorry, being a little
No, you're
sick.
good.
Laurent
Yeah.
knows about that for everybody out
Yeah.
there. Um, and interestingly, and I went through your discography, and I hope that I found all of them. Um, you did two other covers. You covered "These Arms Are Snakes," of course, because they
Yes.
also covered you. You covered "Gold Digger," if I understood it correctly, and you also covered "Earth," "Geometry of
Yes.
Murder."
Yes.
If you yourself, for your band, could choose any other song to cover on a recording, not just live, on a recording, so that it's there forever, which song would you like to cover yourself?
We were actually just talking about this, and we were arguing over which Godflesh song to cover because I think that it would be there, especially on some of the later records, starting on probably right around "Songs of Love and Hate."
Hmm.
Justin really starts to explore, and this is before Yezu, but we were all big Yezu fans when that first record came out. We were all extremely excited. There's some exploration of melodies where I'm like, man, this could be a riff that I'd want to write, you know? So many of them, and it kept coming up and kept coming up. Less so the sort of like, uh, you know, kind of quasi and industrial, sort of repetitive, kind of hammering, older, earlier stuff. But as of late, there's been some currents of melodies flowing through that stuff that I think would make for a great cover. Um, he did a very nice remix for us very early on.
Yeah,
So
I was just
you know,
thinking it would be like a full circle thing again, right?
yeah. Speaking of affirmation, just being able to tour with Yezu earlier on and connect with him was really fun.
Can I wish for a cover?
Oh yeah, please do.
I would like a Pelican version of one of Bowie's Berlin songs
Oh sure,
because I
fantastic.
think those are like some of his darker ones.
Hmm.
And I think if you, with your ear for pop melodies, would turn that into a Pelican song, that to me would be nice.
Well, I'll be listening this evening and I'll report back.
If you ever do that, then I want to be in the liner notes. Um, Interesting is also something that I looked up and I was surprised. I didn't know about that. And here we've been talking about finances. You once contributed one of the tracks to a video game, Dead Space 3.
Yes.
Let me guess, that never really got you anything, right?
No, it did. It did. It was
Okay,
great.
cool.
Yeah, it was a proper sync deal. Um, so we were paid for it. But the main thing that it got us was a ton of exposure for the song
Mhm,
"Ephemeral,"
mhm,
which to this day is our the top streaming song by millions. Compared to the rest of the catalog, which is fascinating. And so is like a permanent live staple because it's always very interesting and we run into people who found out about us through that video game
cool,
all the time.
cool. Yeah, and it's I just looked it up quickly. It was also released on what we all come to need. And here again, we come to like great labels. I mean, like, how
Yeah.
cool is it to be one of a few bands that can say, okay, I released through Hydra Head and Sovereign Lord. That is something that not a lot of bands can say for themselves.
No, it was great. And then both labels were excellent homes for the material that we were doing on them for sure.
Pelican released quite a lot of live recordings in your personal absence. Five of
Yes.
them, if I counted correctly. Um, did you listen to those? Was it
Yes.
something that you okay? Could you choose a favorite out of those five?
The Dunk set is very
Mm,
strong.
mm,
Part of what I understand about how that came about is that Dallas was super equipped with mixing, and they got into the habit of doing soundboard recordings
Mm,
in order to have that as a possibility, which is great.
mm,
They're interesting also because of how differently we play the material that I was on.
mm.
And so it's always interesting to hear how they took those songs and interpreted them, a little bit differently on the guitar side.
Did some of those interpretations then also change the way that you are now playing those tracks?
No, because I don't think that I relearned my parts to myself
Hmm.
um, by going back to the original recordings,
Hmm.
and eventually just having muscle memory sort of do the homework for me. But there were definitely moments on the older ones where I was like, I don't remember what I did. And
Hmm.
Trevor would go, well, that's lost to memory because I don't remember either. And I would just have to hear it and try to come up with what it was because I certainly didn't
Hmm.
play those songs for a long time.
Hmm. Now I will give you a few alternatives, and you have to choose for a live
Yes.
recording. And I'll give you the three big R's: Red Rocks, Radio City Music Hall, or Roadburn.
Oh, we there were great shows at Roadburn. I would probably choose Red Rocks just for the external element of it.
Mm, mm, mm,
Um, just being in that environment would be pretty wild.
mm. I have to ask one question about Tusk.
Oh, sure.
Will we get new music, or is that
I
been
don't think
there,
that
done
ship has
that? We
sailed.
said everything.
No, I don't think that ship has sailed at all. I think it's a matter of having the time to be spontaneous with it. Because if it happened, it would happen spontaneously, and it would need to
Mm,
be um, when Larry was in town and we were working on something else, and we're just like, you know what, Trevor's got these weird riffs. Let's take the time to dig in and make it happen. But it was our main thing for quite some time there, and I'm pretty proud of the
mm.
catalog.
Yeah. Um, I have one last question before we come to the infamous quickfire round at the end. I mean, like, out of the songs that the guys wrote without you, I mean, like, there are surely some that you play live.
Yes,
Which one is your favorite? And
we
maybe also
did.
why?
So we did Midnight and Mescaline
Mm,
for sure.
mm.
Um, and then let me just actually, I got to pull them up because
Yeah,
I'm
while
not.
Laurent is looking at it for everybody,
Yeah.
the guys released one studio record without him, Nighttime Stories, back in 2019, and Midnight and Masculine, if I remember correctly, was even a single out of from that record.
Yes, and we just played the song that Al from Shiner is on. Um,
I would have to look that up.
yeah, so from Forever Becoming, we did um The Cliff.
Ah, okay.
Um,
Yep.
and we've wanted to go back and relearn some of the other ones, some of the names that have come. I mean, what I expressed to them was that I want to keep doing those songs because they'll be new to me.
Hmm.
Um, and they're also an important part of the catalog. So we've kicked around Vestiges as a possibility. Um, Full Moon Black Water
Hmm.
from Nighttime Stories. I think I said that right. Hope I did. Um, is a song that I like particularly off that record. So
Hmm.
any one of those would be fair game. But yeah, we intend to keep the songs in there.
Hmm. By the way, I wanted to ask. I mean, like, you left in 2012. Forever Becoming was released in 2013, so that's the other studio record. Are there any tracks on Forever Becoming that you initially had been involved in
No,
writing? Mhm.
no, 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 no. I everything that I wrote ends at the Ataraxia EP.
Mhm. So first of all, thanks for all the insight into
Oh
rejoining the
yeah.
band and into all of those things. But of course, when Laurent and I were writing emails, and we wrote a lot of emails because both of us had a hard time finding a good moment to do this. We were talking about food because this guy here is managing three restaurants. One of them is a big star in Chicago. And we were talking about tacos or generally about Mexican food. So, what is your favorite taco or what is your favorite Mexican dish?
Uh, a favorite taco would be probably the papas, the potato taco that we do. So it's just spicy potatoes with queso fresco on top of a little cilantro.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and honestly, queso fundido is probably my favorite Mexican dish. It's just melted cheese with rajas peppers, um, a little fresh oregano on top, and tortillas on the side. Super good
Mm-hmm.
stuff. Um, but yeah, I honestly think the one thing that's critical is for the tortillas to be fresh.
Mm-hmm. And
And
I'll use
yeah.
Mexican food to lead into the quick fire round. You will always get two alternatives, and you have to choose between them and give a short explanation. First one, and as I said, I'll use Mexican dishes as an entry into this one. Cilantro, yes or no?
Yes. Fragrant, aromatic, delightful. I don't know why people think it's soapy. It's
I think it depends a lot on the amount of cilantro.
yes. Yes.
I mean, like if you put like a handful onto it, then it's
No, it's got
soapy.
to be a little. I have
Yeah.
however, an aversion to dill. So please, no dill.
Okay. Okay. And now we of course go back to music. Let's start off with people whose sound is similar to yours. Mono. I'll give you two records. Him to the Immortal Wind or Nowhere Now Here.
Oh, hmm.
Mhm. I mean, like the easy answer would be him.
Yeah. Tough choice. You know, let me think about that because most of the time that we spent with mono, we spent very, very early. Um, and I'm trying to remember when we toured with them because that's when I was watching them all the time. And I want to say it was probably around One More Step and You Die.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe not. Maybe it was, no, it wouldn't have been that because that was 2002. But right around that time is the mono material that I've found the most connection with.
Mm-hmm. So out of those two, it would also still have to be him to the Immortal Wind
Yeah,
because it's much
yeah, it's
older
much
than
earlier. Yeah,
Nowhere Now Here.
yeah.
And then I also chose bands that you worked with. So I'll give you These Arms Are Snakes, and you have to choose which record you would
Ah,
rather listen to right now, Easter or Auctioneers.
oh, come on.
Just right now. And don't say the thing
Easter,
like, it's like two children.
Easter, probably
Hmm?
Easter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Young Widows. You get to choose between Old Wounds and In and Out of Youth and light, what is it? You know which one I mean.
Um, In and Out of Youth and Lightness.
Yes, likeness, that was it.
Probably Old Wounds.
Okay.
But that is a band that I think no matter what era, the same with These Arms Are Snakes, no matter what era of the band, they can play pretty much whatever they want and are
Mhm.
best experienced live.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Um, and then I thought about Pelican as a Chicago band. And before I give you the alternatives, Do you consider your band a Chicago band? Is there something Chicago in Pelican?
Definitely. For one, Brian, Trevor, and Larry are all originally from here, albeit from the suburbs. But obviously spending a lot of time
Yeah.
in Chicago and eventually living there. Um, I moved here in 1995, so I've been here for over half my life.
Mm,
Um, I think that the city, especially in our when we were coming up, and even so now, is very welcoming of just about anything in its music community,
mm,
and has a lot of diversity and inclusivity. I would consider it to be one of the strongest music scenes. You know, everybody's got different places that have good ones, but it was definitely a wonderful place to be
mm,
a young band. There were a lot of
mm,
avenues for doing things.
mm.
Um, I would consider there to be a work ethic that's kind of distinctly Chicagoan, that and a free form to the playing that is also propos for being from here.
Um, and so I give you a few Chicago bands. Shellac versus US Maple.
I would probably pick shellac.
Mhm. Can you say why?
I think the sound, the repetition, the sort of rhythmic intensity, and watching them open for Fugazi a bunch back then, I was drawn more to their sound than I think
Mhm.
US Maple.
Mhm. I'm not sure whether you ever really listened to those two bands that I will put up now, but for me, they had some kind of influence when I was younger. So Alkaline Trio versus Naked Raygun.
Oh, Naked Raygun.
Hmm.
I think everyone in the band is a fan of Naked Raygun and Pegboy.
Hmm. Tortoise versus the Sea and Cake.
Tortoise.
Hmm. And the last Chicago couple, Jesus Lizard versus the Flying Litterbuckers.
Jesus Lizard. I'm sure that somebody would answer the Flying Lutenbachers, but that's a very tall comparison. But yeah, Jesus Lizard for sure.
Mhm. Um, and then, I mean, like that is a hard one, but I nevertheless give it to you because I mean, like you know Aaron Turner much better than I do. But if you had to choose between listening to Sumac right now and listening to ISIS right now, which one would you choose?
Um, well, if I had to choose in the next like half hour,
Hmm.
I would probably put on the most recent Sumac,
Hmm.
because I found it to be a very impressive, weighty, and just tremendous record.
Hmm.
But the draw of nostalgia for a particular time um, would make ISIS be a difficult band to not have win that round. You know what I mean? Not it's not even a round. It's just that band was so, especially early on, was like so critical to what we were doing.
Something that I didn't write down, but you've mentioned them as an influence, Neurosis,
Yeah.
which I find interesting because I mean, like I can see the influence, but at the same time, Neurosis were a lot more psychedelic, more tribal in a
Ble
way. But
bleak, very bleak at times.
yeah, but also one of the I think I've seen them a handful of times, and it was always one of the best life experiences ever. Nevertheless,
Yes,
Through Silver and Blood versus Times of Grace.
gotta go with Times of Grace. I think
Interesting. I
there's
would
yeah,
also. I mean, like I love Silver and Blood, but
yeah. Times of Grace was the first recording where, and you know, it's the electrical audio recording. The spaciousness. I was like, wow, this band sounds unbelievable. And you could hear like a pin drop on that recording. I think it's really a recording that changed the way that heavy bands are recorded forevermore.
mm, mm. that I would. Totally agree with that. And the last one, and here I want to go a little full circle. For those who really listened to the comparisons that I made, I gave you already two bands that involve, to me, the sexiest bass player ever, Brian Cook. I gave you These Arms Are Snake, and I gave you Sumac, and I'll give you a third one, and that is Botch. You have to choose between We Are the Romans and American Nervoso.
I'll pick We Are the Romans. We all loved American Nervoso, and it was a game changer for what hardcore could be. I feel the same way about Until Your Heart Stops, for example, from
Cave-In,
Cave-In.
yes.
But
Yeah.
Just like with Jupiter, with We Are the Romans, it just gets into it's just such a different execution, and the songs are so compelling. It's really probably top three hardcore records of all time for me.
I mean, like I grew up with so much hardcore. I would say
Yeah,
probably top 10, but because there are so many awesome ones. But it's definitely it is, and that
yeah.
is the important thing. It's a game changer, definitely.
I said top three. Maybe let's go with top 10. Top 10
Because
is more
like top
top
three,
10 is
that
more
is,
reasonable. Yeah, top 10 is more reasonable.
yeah.
I was like,
But I
man,
know what you mean.
I,
It was a game changer at the time, yes. And not a lot of hardcore records can say that
no,
for themselves. Laurent, thanks for your time.
yeah, it
Thanks
was
for
a
all the
pleasure.
detailed answers. Thanks for Flickering Resonance. And I can't wait to see you guys back on stage in Europe in the late spring. It's already, the
Yeah,
dates
we're
have
coming
been
back.
announced.
Yeah,
It'll be really
please
cool.
don't be a stranger. Let's meet up and talk in person.
Yeah, we still have to eat some tacos.
Yes, I won't be flying with tacos, but we'll figure it out.
Yeah, we will find a way. So, for everybody out there, remember tomorrow we'll have another interview. I already know who it's going to be. I'm not going to disclose it right now, but it's another amazing one. And Laurent, thanks for your time. Bye bye.
You're welcome. Thank you.